Good evening and welcome to part 3 of the PHILCO 3812 radio. I got the electrolytics in. They didn't go in as neatly as I wanted to because that's just the way I do things. I just can't do things neat. I tried putting the terminal and soldering it onto the old electrolytic, in other words the tab that normally would go to the chassis, but it broke off several times on it, so I figured I'd just snap these off completely. So these wet electrolytics are disconnected from the circuit. We have a 22 on the input and a 10 on the second filter. That's what a lot of guys do. I've talked to several about this, and that should be okay. So we normally would have a 12 on the input from the cathode of the 84 tube, so it's going to have a 22, and a little wet electrolytic, which is a 4 microfarad, has a 10. So we've got the we ran a wire over here, which is the floating or the non-grounded negative side. Over here we've got the ground to the bracket, which is right there. The screw that I put through, I drilled a hole through, and that's the ground for the other electrolytic. So the input filter ground does not go to the chassis, goes to floating negative, floating by I don't know how many volts, but it's usually done for the bias of the audio output tube. The lighting is terrible here, right? The light is in my way when I'm trying to work. There is a resistor right on the volume control. It's not on the schematic. I can't find it. There is a 51,000 ohm resistor, and I think that's what it is, and I measured it. It seems to be okay, but the pictorial is showing the 51,000 ohm, that green one right there, on the trimmer cap. Here is the 51,000. Goes to one leg of the volume control. The other leg goes down to a 4 meg ohm resistor, which is right here. That was open, so I had a 4.3 meg, close as I can get, and replaced that. But number 13, which is the 51,000, is not in the location that the pictorial shows. The pictorial shows number 13 to be right on the coil. Now you're looking at this upside down, not by the pictorial, but I had to turn the pictorial upside down, so number 13 is supposed to be near this coil. It's showing this one as being 51,000. That's incorrect. I'm going to put this on the dim bulb and try it out. I am pretty sure, as I mentioned before, the 75 tube is burned out. I could be wrong. I have not tested the tubes, but I will do that. But I want to see if I get any life out of this. So I'm going to put the power cord on here. This is where the power cord would go, with a safety cap on each leg of the power line. we'll put it through the dim bulb. We don't need to worry about the isolation transformer because this set has a power transformer. So let me get hooked up, and I want to put a voltmeter on the input filter capacitor so that I can monitor the high voltage, assuming the 84 tube is not defective. It does light, but like I say, I have not tested them. We are connected. DC volts. Now let's just see what we get. Let's flip this on. We're going to start real slow here and watch our current. We got an analog meter here, we got a digital here. So let's go up to 40 volts. Let's go up to 48 volts. No current yet. There it is. The B+. We only got a little bit of voltage going in this now. We got 48 volts going in. Let's go to 55 volts. We're still not drawing any current. 1/10 of an amp. Uh, 34.36 volts. All right. We'll turn this all the way up here. No more squeaking of the volume control. So like I say, that deoxit worked its way in there. Now there's no loop coil on here yet. But we got to get more voltage than that before this thing will operate. But we're doing it very slowly here. And feels like there's a little warmth out of the 75, so maybe it is not burned out. I just did not see it light. All right, let's go to 65 volts. Still drawing 1/10 of an amp. $75 volts on the B+. Don't forget, we're still way down below. I mean, I wouldn't expect to hear anything at all out of this until it gets around 90 volts. So we're still not going to push it. It's 75 volts. Still no current draw. $138 volts on the B+, the input filter. We're doing this real slow here. Watching that current, that's very important. We're not drawing any current to speak of. There's a possibility that we could have other problems, but let's try 85 volts. We're doing 2/10 of a amp now. Yeah, 184 volts on the B+. I don't feel any hum out of the speaker. No, very quiet. Now I didn't finish checking every single resistor. Like there's one down here. I'm not going to stick the screwdriver in, but right down in there There's one, that's that purple one. I have not traced that out yet, so I mean there could be some other problems. Let's go check and get this up a little higher. We get up around 90 volts, we should be hearing something. Alright, we're at 93 volts now. Check the B plus, 214 volts. So obviously the power transformer is definitely good on the secondary. We're kind of concerned with the secondary of the power transformer. All right. Okay. Audio's working. And let's go to 100 volts. Well, how about 102? How about 102? Current hasn't increased too much. Let's check the B plus. 244 volts. Nothing on the radio. Of course, there's always a possibility a coil could be gone. No. Hang on a minute. I'm going to put that loop coil on there. All right. Well, I did get a bunch of noise, but now it went silent. Went totally silent. It was making noise. Let's get this up to... Let's get it up to 115 volts. Still not drawing any more current. Uh, 280 volts on the input filter. Well, of course we could have a bad tube or more. It made a lot of noise when I connected this up, but now not doing anything. Alright, we're up to 120, and that's as high as we're going to go. Still only drawing, if I could read that right, 20 mils or 200 mils. I can't tell. On this one, it's too low on the scale to read. We got 292 volts right now on the input filter with 120 volts going in, and can't see that without my magnifying, so won't even try. But I think that's about where, if I remember correctly, it's about the right B plus voltage for this. So I would probably say the next step would be to test the tubes, and if all the tubes for some reason are good, I'll have to check that resistor and anything else. And the one in the back of the volume control here, which is not listed as a 51,000, it shows it on the schematic, but the 51,000 showing over here, so that's a very confusing thing here, but let's I can't do much with this now because this is too hazardous to put down and wiggle the tubes and everything else. It's too hazardous until I get a regular cord on here and get this B+ wire out of here. Let's see what we got here. Anything? Antenna coil could be gone too, but it was very active. Now it's dead. As a matter of fact, it came to life at the top end of the dial. Nothing. No. All right. Okay, we'll continue on with part 3. Good afternoon, and well, today is the next day. We're still working on part 3 of this radio, but yesterday, last night, off camera, and today earlier, I ran into what appeared to be some heartbreaking problems. It appears that at least one of the coils is, if my signal tracing is correct, appears to be open. But I'm not 100% sure of that. We're going to go ahead and trace this some more today on camera. I also found out that this radio does not use a loop coil. I watched a few videos. There seems to be quite a few videos on this PHILCO 3812 here, and none of them have a loop coil on the back of the radio. Upon closer examination of the schematic, there is an antenna and a ground wire coming out, but the way this is here, it appears that it would connect to a loop antenna coil. So that's good news, but it did not make any difference when I connected it on. Also, my 75 tube in here is not burnt out, but it keeps going out, and I have to move the tube. The base is a little loose, but the way those pins are on these vintage tubes, they look like they're formed in there. It don't look like the solder like on the 8-pin octal, the more recent tubes. So I don't know whether it's a bad solder connection or not, but I took the tube out, and I have a little 220 emery cloth here, and I did each pin, and I have a set of brushes I got from Harbor Freight. I put deoxide on it, and I cleaned each pin of the tube socket, and they appear to fit tight in there, but the tube has to be pushed over just a little bit and then it'll light. So when I fired it up today off camera, there was no audio, and the damn 75 tube, which was the first stage audio also, in addition to being the second detector ABC. So then I got my audio back by touching the high side of the volume control like I did on the other video that I showed you. So I am going to continue with this project, and if it's the coils, there's not much I can do about it. We'll put it back in the cabinet and just shelve it for a while until we can go further with it. So what I'm going to do now is take off the wire that I had on here for an antenna. Now, I've already got part of this part 3 on here, as you're seeing so far. This being another day, we're just going to continue with it. I also decided I better put something on the speaker here to protect it. And we'll deal with the 75 tube later. I still have not tested the tubes, but what's bothering me is started taking readings of the coils And according to the schematic, and I'm going to get you, I can't get you close up, I'm sorry. I just can't deal with huge file size, and the only camera that'll give me real good close-ups is the Sony HDR SR12, and I just cannot do that. I would be here all month trying to render and edit all that stuff out because the file size is too big, as I keep telling you all the time. So I can't give you good close-ups. All I can do is hold a magnifier in front of the ZE-1 and hope you can see it. But anyways, according to the schematic, and I'm going to get you over here now. I apologize if I can't, I'm not a very good, I just don't have the proper equipment to give you good videos. From memory, which is pretty poor, that's supposed to be 3.3 ohms. I'm getting 3.5 to 4 ohms there. And as I recall, I think this one's okay. The 6A7, I got to turn you around a little bit. Hang on a minute. All right, I'm sorry, I'm holding the schematic, so I cannot put the magnifier glass up there. Doing the best I can here. 6A7. So if I'm reading this correctly, we go over here to this coil here, which I will turn you around. See if I can get the magnifier in there. And where am I here? I lost my place. There it is. Okay. There it is, right there. There's my finger. I don't even know if I'm in camera here. I'm moving my finger because I can't see the viewfinder. I can't tell exactly where I am. I'll take my word for it. That's all I can tell you. I can't read that resistance. These schematics are not, and I tried a couple of different ones, downloaded. Doug had sent me one, but it's the exact same thing I've got here. Looks like 8 ohms. According to this, see this dotted line here? You might be able to see that, maybe you won't. That's the tuning capacitor, it's 2-gang tuning capacitor. That's supposed to be, it looks like 8 ohms. That coil right there. So we've got an open coil. So let me put the meter on. We'll get my ohm meter out here. Well, let's see if I can get you. You may not be able to see that. This is the meter I won at the ham auction. Somebody asked me about a yellow meter. There is no yellow meter on the bench. This is orange. So the colors must be off on your monitor. Anyways, this is the meter, but you asked me what kind of meter it was. It's a THS INDE 18B plus. Okay, if that means anything. Here. All right, let's see. I can't tell. I can't even see if this thing is. Yeah, okay. All right, now. The tuning capacitor is grounded to the chassis, and we will double check that. Gotta use clip leads. Never, never, never can make the contact by holding it on. It just never works for me. So we'll clip the lead to the chassis. And now we'll double check our capacitor frame. All right, 0.3 ohms, so in other words, 0.2 ohms, in other words, a dead short. In other words, the tuning capacitor is grounded to the chassis. Okay, here is the first section, 3 ohms. So if I'm reading this correctly, 3.3 ohms right here. Oh man, this is not easy when you ain't got the right equipment to do the job. Okay, can you see that? Alright, 3.3 ohms on the antenna, from the antenna wire to the chassis. Okay, I already checked that. The one below that, it looks like 6.5 or 8.5. See that right there? I hope you can see that. If you can, I'm sorry, I apologize. This gets so, you don't know how frustrating it is when I can't work, and I know that you must feel the same way. You know, now you know how I feel when I'm working on something with piss poor eyesight. And I'm doing camera work that's piss poor. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. But alright, so we're reading 3 ohms instead of either 6.5 or whatever it is. I can't read it on the schematic. So anyways, from this side of the tuning capacitor, the coil is okay, whatever coil that is. But on the second tuning capacitor, which goes to the grid cap of the 6A7, is reading 2.9 megohms. 2.9 megohms. There's supposed to be a coil there. There is a coil there. Let me turn this off. Right here. And it's got a covering on it. And I cannot work with that stuff. So I suspect there's a possibility this coil is bad. It's a 6A7, which, as I said, is a detector oscillator. So this could be the oscillator coil. So possibility the oscillator isn't working. The IF frequency is 470 kilocycles. All right. So according to this, I think this is out. It's open, but I'm not 100% sure. And if I'm not 100% sure, I don't want to mess around with it. Because if it is good, it won't be if I open it up. And I won't touch that. That's in the same category as IF cans. The wire's too small in there, thin as a human hair, and I will break it. So, now, that's where we're at on this. The 75, I'm sorry, I'm moving my finger to see where I am in the viewfinder. Okay, the 75 tube is loose in the base, not in the socket. The base is solid. It's the only tube that's loose, and I have to turn it over in order to check it. So I lost my audio until I pushed the tube over to the side, and then the audio came back. Of course, the radio didn't work. I go easy because I don't want to put a strain on the socket here. Now I cleaned the pins, and they weren't too bad with emery cloth, but the base is a little bit loose. Years ago, back in the 60s, whenever you got a loose tube base, they used to sell a little container of tube base cement, and I used to just put it around here. The stuff worked good, It hardened up. The problem was, if you used it on the caps, and I've had a lot of these grid caps come off, and as long as you can solder them and then put them down, you put your tube base cement down in there and put that on and solder it. It stayed tight until the tube got hot, and then the tube base cement loosened up and your grid cap would loosen up. And it's the same way with the basing. I guess nowadays they probably use super glue. I have no idea. But this, what I'm going to do here today and now, we're going to stop. I'm kind of like frustrated because I know that coil is bad. And my saying is, I'm dead in the water. I'll just shelf it for a while. But I got to put this tube in the tube tester and see if it stays lit in the tube tester. If I push it a little bit, see, it doesn't rock in here, it just moves a little bit. But it turns in the base. But you see how the pins are here? They're very smooth. So, I have never had to solder these type of tube pins. They appear to be all one piece, but I would imagine if they're soldered, they're nice and smooth and they're soldered nice. Not like your octal tubes, sometimes you can tell. And I've redone quite a few of those bases. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put it in the tube tester. And I'm going to test all the rest of the tubes. So let me get you set up for that. Well, I have a little magnifier here. I can't tell. The camera's in the corner of my shop. So I can't get you a good view of the tube tester. So this is the Radio City Products 308 tube tester. This is the one I bought on eBay shortly after I set up my shop here. So it has the original cord, although there's a piece of heat shrink on here. I'm not sure if I put that on or not. So we'll get that plugged in. Yeah, we'll plug it in there. We'll plug it in the dim bulb tester and put the bypass of the bulb on. An outlet's an outlet, it don't really matter. Okay, I don't know if you can see it. I hope you can. I'll take my little thing and look there, see if you can see the tester. I can't tell. This is way too small for me to see. I see movement in the viewfinder, but I'm hoping you can see the whole thing. Alright. Been so long since I used this thing. My mind is like a sieve. It really is. The 75 tube is calling for setting this on K, which is cathode. For test number for the first section of the tube, which is regular section. That's what it says here. Setting the shunt controller 80 in this case. So we'll put the grid cap on. And this is basically an emission tester. We got it on 6 volts. We got to put it on regular. Line adjust. What is that going on? Okay. Line adjust, okay. I see, okay, I remember. It uses a 6H6. dual diode in the tester. I recall now. And it took a while to warm up, so the line adjust on this doesn't respond right away. And I said, geez, what the hell, something burn out in this or something? All right, I'm on line test now, and it's setting the line adjust. You adjust it by the rheostat here, and you always adjust your line with the tube plugged in. You can adjust it before then, but you're going to have to bring up the line voltage because the filament draws current. So, all right, now the tube is lit. What I want to do first is I want to see if the tube goes out. So I'll know whether it's the socket in the radio that's doing it or a bad connection in the tube base. Don't seem to be going out. All right, I got the 75 tube in here. All right, let's see what the merit is on that. That's good. Now that's the, I made the other two tests on it. Now, as I'm looking at the tube here, like I did with the other tester, I think the tube is lit. I get an awful reflection. Hang on a minute, I gotta turn this light. Yeah, it's lit. The tube is loose in the base. See? It's loose in the base. But it don't seem to be cutting out. Alright. I'm going to hold the emission down. I'm wiggling, moving the glass from left to right. The base is stationary. Nope, I think it's in the socket. Probably could try to tighten it up, but I'll tell you this: these tubes in this radio fit very, very tight in their sockets. All right, I'm going to do the rest of these off camera. It takes me so long to set things up here. I'll be running into another hour-long video and just testing tubes alone. So. I'm going to test the rest of these, but I'm going to do it off camera. It appears that there's an open coil, at least one that I know of. It's going to take me a very, very long time to test all the coils in this, to trace it out, you know. So, who knows? The IF can could be open. There is another coil underneath. I want to make a point. One thing I want to mention on this here radio, and that is I've watched 4 or 5 of these radios being repaired. Every single one of them has the what they call a PHILCO Bakelite block or whatever you call them. This doesn't have it. This does not have it. This had those 2 big mica mold capacitors in there. Look like big mica capacitors. And they look factory. There was no Bakelite block. But yet every single one of these radios had one. This one don't. So I imagine, I don't really know, maybe that was the line filter, the 0.01s, which is what these are. Good question, I don't know. But anyways, I got a lot of tracing to do. We're going to end this right now. This is getting way too long. This could be out. This could be burned out. This could be burned out. I'm not sure which one goes across the tuning capacitor. I'm sure this goes through this section here. This is what I'm reading, very high resistance here. And I'm getting a good reading because there's a coil across this section here. There is supposed to be a coil across this section too, according to the schematic. If there is, that coil is open, and I think this is the coil. So we're going to end it now. I'm going to do a lot of that testing off camera. I'm not coming back on this video or this radio until I get a good report or a bad report on the coils. That concludes the video. I got a lot of time to spend on tube testing here, and got to get used to using these testers. It's been so damn long since I use it, and my mind just goes, I forget everything. Honest to God, just don't pay to get old. The Radio City Products tube tester, I'm always messing up the settings on that. But the way this tester is, it's always been a problem. Never can find my right magnifying glass. Is somewhere in the book it mentions about the darker letters in here. And what throws me off is, like on one section of the 75, it says test 1 and 2. Then you got on A, you got 1-1. And then you got the 6.3 filaments. Then you've got on C, which is your load control, you got 20-38. Well, what is it? 20 or is it 38? I think test 1 is 20 and the right one 38. I think that's what it is. I tested it that way and I believe that was okay. But then you got the up levers. Up levers is 20-3. Okay? So, just set this back here, turn this off. And according to the book, the 0 is the 10. Why don't they just put 10 instead of the 0? So, it's coming back to me, but it's been so damn long since I used this. And then you've got a 5 and a very dark 6. Somewhere in the book it mentions that. I could not find it again. So, I got a lot of... Here's my other magnifier right there. I cannot find it, you know. You know, if you don't stay with this all the time, you forget. At least I do. And that's why I just never could absorb things. And that's why I'm a tinkerer. Thank you for watching. We'll be back on this radio, but I don't know when.